How come I'm not on the screen?
Yeah, anyways. Hello, everybody, and welcome to First Ring Daily Live. Today's show is brought to you by Smart Deploy. It doesn't matter if you are deploying to 50 or 50,000 machines. Hardware-independent imaging software, that's what Smart Deploy does, and they've got it figured out, unlike Paul, who doesn't realize that he needs to be quiet during the intro.
How can I talk now? I'm pretty good.
If you're going to be good.
How are you?
So Paul, you're are you in Dedham? Are you in Boston? Where are you right now?
Yeah, I technically am in Norwood, which is the town next to Dedham. But yes, I am in Massachusetts.
Are you realize you drove to the wrong house? You no longer live there.
I know. I just want to sleep in my bed. Is that too much to ask?
Yeah, because that's not. I'm sure you would like to. I think the people would be very upset when they woke up and you were in their house. That was once yours.
Yeah. You don't want to see this guy in your house in the morning if you're not expecting it.
Actually, what you should have done is gone and broken in and then done it from the studio that's maybe still erected down there.
You know what? I considered this. So my wife actually visited with these people a couple of weeks ago, and I think it would be a little weird if I showed up and was like, "Hey, could I come in too?" Because they've done a lot of renovations to the house. But my understanding is that the unfinished part of the basement where the studio was, that thing is probably still there. Like, why would you bother tearing it down? So I thought it would be hilarious because, the screen's gone, right? So it's basically just like a brick wall in a corner. But yeah, that would have been funny. I thought about it.
Yeah. Speaking of thinking about it, actually, Paul, now I know Microsoft does this. Actually, I know Apple does it as well. But Google announced this week that they are doing $1 billion in nonprofits and education grants and all sorts of good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is going to be interesting.
Have a new career soon.
Yeah. Specifically, they said they're going to give up to 1,000 employees that they hope we're going to be training 1.2 million people in digital skills. What else do they got going on? Basically, they want to help train people. They want to help bridge the gap between the digital divide, which is basically people who don't have digital skills, and kind of bring them up to speed. And Paul, do you think they are going to train these people in Office 365?
Not specifically. No, I don't. But this is still, I get the competitive aspect to it. But honestly, this is necessary and it's pretty great. And let's face it, when it comes to building things in this country, these days, it's pretty much all digital. So, good for them.
No, it really is. And obviously helping out anybody kind of get skills. We'll be curious. What I really want to see is just how this is going to play out, because Microsoft obviously is trying to break into education. Google, or I shouldn't say trying to break into education, trying to claw back into education. Google, at least here in the US, does very well in that market, extremely well. That's right. I wonder if they're looking at some of the success they had in that area, saying, hey, look, we made investments in education. That's paying off. Why don't we try the corporate world now?
Yeah.
So.
Makes sense.
Yep. Paul, you wrote in the show notes that this isn't new, and I'm going to correct you.
Okay, let's do it.
So Microsoft, actually, Paul, while we were in New York City, put up a page. And it actually is where this image comes from. So if you're familiar with the Xbox One X and some of the holes that are in it to help ventilate, these are some of the different pattern options that they were trying. You got just different squares, and triangles, and whatnot. Yep. Yeah. They said in there that the Xbox One X is the fastest selling console ever, or pre-orders ever. And that's what I assume that you were saying that has already been reported. Is that correct?
Yes. Now let me look at it again. It says the console broke records and pre-order sales of the Project Scorpio Limited Edition, which is back from whatever that was, September, sold more in 5 days than any other Xbox before it. Right. They said that before. Yeah.
Well, what they didn't have on their quote previously was that 5-day portion. That's what's new, is that was the time span that they were quantifying the pre-orders. And so while it's not the end of the world, at least we now know what sort of time frame they were talking in rather than just a vague fastest pre-orders ever. So,
yeah. Wow, that is a really pedantic reading of that. Okay, fine. There's a part of me that kind of wants to look that up and prove you wrong. But you know what? It's not important. I do think that the stuff they're showing off in that post is actually very interesting, the way they came to the design of the new version of the console. And there's a whole thing at Microsoft around hardware. They do this a lot with Surface as well, where they kind of speak to the quality of the thing that they're building. And I was actually, if you look at some of those images, in fact, I think the one you have up or had up on the screen, let me see. Show your screen real quick. Sorry. Anyway, the image that Brad had, there's a bit of Surface look and feel to that, right? The power button, really the way that looks. I mean, there's an interesting kind of familial thing going on that I had never really noticed before.
Yeah, no, that's actually an astute observation, pedantic, one might say. As you pointed out, when I looked up the finer details of a quote, you looked at the finer details of an image. But yeah, no, that's
I think it's fair to say that everyone involved in what we do, whether they are content creators in the tech space or just tech enthusiasts, all share the same broken, pedantic gene. And it's the one thing that binds us together.
Yeah. Speaking of things that are broken, Paul, a very nice segue here. If you're a system admin, how is your week going when it comes to Patch Tuesday?
But they fixed it. It only took them like 2 days. Yeah. I'm curious how you apply a patch when you're blue screening, but okay.
Yeah, that's a fair question. Also, I would be very surprised. I shouldn't say very surprised. Obviously, it was impacting people because what they told us too, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I know you have no problem doing that. This wasn't impacting people like you or I who went to Windows Update. It was people who were using Microsoft managed softwares like SCCM or whatever to deploy it to their systems. And those were the people that were getting hosed, who are the very last on the ladder of people Microsoft really wants to upset, because those are only corporate customers using that software.
Right. It'll be fine. It's just another Tuesday.
I will say they had a nice streak going of not screwing up, but
on the patches, how long has it been? It's been a while, I guess. Yeah, that's true.
I mean, there's always going to be some small issues, but like this was like not letting people boot, essentially just shutting down the entire system and completely hosing it. But that is the way that the cookie patch crumbled today, Paul. Yeah. Anyways, going back to the gaming side, actually, that patch thing jumped into my head when you said the word broken. You wrote up, or you put in Throt now, that PlayStation VR turns 1, and they've got 1 million gamers. Is that
1 million units sold? Yeah. Is that new? I'm not 100% sure that's new. That number actually sounds familiar to me, but they just mentioned it because it's the 1 year anniversary. So. Maybe the more interesting figure there is the number of titles they have coming out over the next year. So I don't know how many are there now. I don't remember. There's some number, probably 130 or something. But they highlighted, I think, 60 plus games that are coming out over the next year as well that they know about already. So in the context of VR, that's actually probably one of the most popular VR platforms on Earth, I would imagine.
Yeah, at 1 million units. What I was wondering is that so it's 1 million units selling at that SKU. I wonder if that actually means that they have 1 million active users using that headset.
Yeah. I would say it does, because the one thing that Sony does is measure retail sales to individuals. Like, these aren't sales into the channel. They're actual sales of the devices. So, yeah, I would think so.
Yeah, so to that end, that very well might be the most popular VR platform. I mean, you can make the argument that, hey, there's 1 billion iOS devices. Well, only a subset of them can do AR, VR. But people who are buying that console are more than likely specifically buying it for that reason. Yeah,
I mean, you and I will be looking at Windows Mixed Reality more in the days ahead, right? That platform ships publicly next week. When I got home from New York, I actually popped out my Daydream View headset and looked at it on the Pixel just to kind of reacquaint myself with where that was at. And, I kind of wonder, it's funny, Microsoft keeps talking about this thing as the next wave of computing. And I don't remember, I had this conversation with someone recently, but I don't see it as the next wave of computing. I see it as being a part of the current wave of PC computing, the current wave of mobile computing with handsets. Like, I think this is something that augments, like augmented reality, these existing platforms. Like, But that was part of that Satya Nadella conversation with GeekWire the other day, where he was saying, we used to have to go and sit in a room and use a computer. Today we have to pull a phone out of our pocket before we can do anything. And the future might be this augmented or mixed reality view where you don't need to pull the phone out of your pocket. Maybe. I think the ambient computing plays a role, like the Invoke and the Echo and the Google stuff, and maybe. I mean, but right now it's kind of bulky, right? It's like a big thing you kind of pop on your skull and you strap it to your head, and you get to walk into stuff if no one's paying attention. It's kind of tough.
Yeah, which begs the next question here, Paul, and I'll be curious to see if you even have an answer for this one. So what is then the VR AR killer app that's going to get people to say, okay, you know what, it is worth strapping this thing to my head?
Yeah, I don't think there is one. Like, there's no word processing app that's going to take off for everybody, right? The problem with this kind of thing is that it is by definition a niche market, right? So for some people, it's going to be games, in particular games, or just games in general. For some people, it's going to be entertainment experiences. Like, it's not horrible to put on a headset and watch a movie, even if it's kind of just a 2D movie that's floating out in front of you. You have a more immersive experience. And these things are very bulky and kind of uncomfortable right now. But, in the tight confines of a plane, you could imagine wearing a smaller headset, but getting this kind of vista view of a movie, and it would make it more bearable. Like, I could picture that. Obviously, Ford and other companies have found ways to use things like HoloLens and in ways that really make sense for them. But Ford using like a HoloLens to design cars is not something that benefits a lot of other companies, so certainly not company types. And so it's kind of specific to that industry. So I think that's the tough part of it. There is no one thing you can point to and say, this is it. See, everyone gets it now. For me, I often talk about this kind of fantasy app where it's like just sitting in a Paris cafe, and it's basically a 360-degree movie that plays while you're sitting there. And you just pretend you're somewhere else for a little while. Like, I could seriously imagine getting lost in something like that for a little while at least. But something like that, even that, it's not a killer app. It's just something I think would be kind of cool.
Somebody pointed this out to me, and I'll be curious to see if you agree, that I think, and I the more I think about this, the more I believe this, I think one of the killer apps that made smartphones kind of real was actually mapping. Was that all of a sudden you didn't have to look it up on the web. You could just be walking around with real-time GPS on a map with you everywhere. And I think a lot of us take for granted how powerful that is and how much of a pain in the butt it was before we had this capability in our pocket.
Yeah, it's almost. I always think of HD, and I would say 4K is going to happen. This will happen as well. HD was the thing that brought non-techie guys into tech a little bit because they like sports, And sports on HD was like, yep, I need this thing. I think everyone kind of saw the advantage of that. I don't think we have a thing like that for for VR or whatever, but. I don't know. It's not going to be. You could do this right now, but I mean, it's not going to be that long before it's kind of mainstream to go to IKEA and with a picture of your room and be able to place. Actually, you wouldn't have to go to IKEA. You could have your room there and put IKEA furniture into the room to kind of see what it looks like, and then order it that way. You would be do this from your house, right? I mean, that's kind of cool. But furniture buying is one of those things you don't do every weekend, so. Killer app, no, it's useful. I mean, it's useful, but
so that it's funny you mentioned that app actually exists. It was one of the first launched for ARKit on iOS. I actually downloaded it. You can do exactly that. You can put a couch in your living room from anything in their catalog. Yeah,
no, what I meant was, I know I'm sorry. I do know it's available. What I meant was that it would be like mainstream. Like, in other words, this is just,
gotcha.
Like the IKEA buying experience is pretty much either looking at a catalog or the website, or literally going to the store and then coming home with all the boxes. But what I mean is, like, in the future, this is a much better way to do it, because it is a really good use of this technology, because you can stand there in your room and see the room and see what the furniture, and it would scale correctly to the size of the room. Like, that solves a lot of problems. Because when we moved, we went to IKEA several times. You're sitting there looking at a bed, and you're like, "Will this fit my daughter's room?" I think so. Like, you don't really, probably, right? I mean, but that's that kind of thing is kind of cool. Yeah. Again, you're not going to use it every day.
one of the things that might help sell VR, at least for me, and you actually kind of hit on it, you just kind of glossed over it, actually might be sports. If you've seen like anything, I think CBS does it, I'm pretty sure Fox does it, where they do this like 3D view camera stuff from an instant replay where they'll show a guy catching it and they have cameras all around the stadium and they kind of like do a panoramic around him. It would be interesting to see if they could recreate that like live, like you watch the feed on your VR
bet that
headset.
would be nauseating, unfortunately, but I agree that would be amazing. Literally last night, coincidentally, I was talking to the friend who I'm staying with here. We were, the football game was on TV in a restaurant, and we were talking about this stuff a little bit. And I said, you can kind of, they had the talking heads, right? And I hate all the people. And this is a big problem in the NFL, with the exception of Tony Romo somehow. Everyone who announces anything on football games is hated. Everyone hates these people. And they're really highly paid. And they're kind of talking heads. So there's a lot of blather before the game. There's a lot of blather during the game. And I was saying to him, I think the future of this is going to be not curated is the wrong word, is a customized kind of broadcast where you could control the angle that, like there's like a replay and it's like, was he out at second base or, was that a touchdown or not or whatever the sport. And, you're kind of held to what they're showing you. And it's like, why can't you zoom in a little more? I think the ability to control that stuff, you wouldn't want to micromanage it for the whole game, but kind of choose the kind of scenes you want to see. And I also think choosing the broadcasters, like if you think about what we're doing right now, which is podcasting, there are local guys in every city area in the United States and probably around the world who know more about that sport than anybody and know more about that team, which is really the important thing. And wouldn't it be nice if instead of looking at Joe Buck and those other idiots that are on whatever NFL thing you're watching, you could have your local guys doing it, right? Like kind of like people used to do, or people could still do with the radio, even though it's
that's what I do.
Delayed. Yeah, but the problem, right? It's not, the audio doesn't sync up with what you're seeing on the TV.
So there's a solution for this.
Look at you. Okay, but you understand that, right? Like you could see how this it would be useful. What do you do?
Yeah, the solution for that, by the way, 2 quick comments, is there are certain dark corners of the internet where you can find all the NFL streams. And so what you do is you just hit pause for about half a second,
3 seconds or whatever. Yeah.
Whatever the radio delay is. Yep. And then you hit play, and then I listen to my local 700 WLW announcers, and I get the stream right on my pooter, and it's great.
So
one other quick thing
what you just described is pretty technical. Sorry, I just wanted to say, but bringing that capability to the guys who bought into HD just because they wanted to watch sports, right? You take something that is technology and you make it easy. I think people would pay for this, and they wouldn't have to pay for those goons that are on TV now because no one wants to see them. No one.
Right. Before we move on, one quick comment about football announcers. So it was when I think it was the Players Championship. I can't remember which golf tournament it was. It was held right outside of Seattle. It was hosted on Fox, and they chose Joe Buck to do the golf announcements.
Because Joe Buck is a golf guy, and he knows a lot about golf.
He was the John Madden of golf announcers. Well, if he hits the ball in the cup with less shots than the other guy, he's going to win. Like it was like that type of announcements, and it was.
I think this guy needs to come in under par by more than the other guys, and then maybe he'll win the game.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
I have
so
a personal
anyway,
vendetta against Joe Buck, but anyway.
Anyways, do you work in IT? Have you ever deployed a computer? You know that process of putting a new image on a machine, whether it's ransomware, broken hard drive, whatever. You're setting up a new machine. It happens every week in any size company from 50 to 50,000. If that process is taking you more than 15 minutes, there is definitely a better way. And these guys, Smart Deploy, they've got it figured out. And they've got a faster solution than anything else out there. 47% faster than Semantic Ghost. And some even describe it as MDT for dummies. It really just takes the complexity out of the deployment process. You can learn a lot more and grab a free trial. And this isn't just like a temporary thing. They've got free licenses for Thurrott users. If you go to smartdeploy.com/Thurrott, you can go grab those licenses. They're not timed, they're lifetime. Go figure it out. Go play with them, and they'll see how they can save you some time. Because that's what Smart Deploy does. They make the image deployment process a heck of a lot easier. Speaking of making life easier, Paul,
Mm-hmm.
We usually do on Wednesdays for people who don't follow us every day. On Wednesdays, we usually do this question and answer thing where we ask the readers for questions, and we usually get a handful.
Mm-hmm.
But Paul, I have a question, and I don't know if you're going to know the answer to this, but it will make my life a lot easier. So, to paint the scenario here, I have 3 monitors that I use on a daily basis. I have the main one. I have one with TweetDeck and Skype open, and then the other one I have Todoist, which is my task management thing, and RSS Reader right next to it. Every day when I turn my computer on, I have to reposition all those apps. I have to get them back into the spots. They never change. They're always in the exact same spot. Yet every day when I turn my computer on, whether it's sleeping, whether I shut it all the way down, I have to reposition. Is there any way, any app, any paid service, I will give people money so that when I turn my computer on, I either hit a button or all the apps appear where they're supposed to be docked?
Actually, there is, and I can't remember the name of it, but someone will know. Someone in the comments or whatever will know, or in the forum, the chat room. It's one of those techie terms where people give you feedback. I used to use something like that because you can configure whenever this app window runs, position it here, size it this way, that kind of thing. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yep.
Yeah, those exist. Like there are utilities like that. So I haven't done that in a long time. But I'm sure someone will come up with an exact name of something. Sizer might do it, although I had, what was it called? Resizer. Sizer or Resizer. I had problems with that on Windows 10, so I haven't used it in a while. But yeah, those things exist, so I think you'll be able to find it.
Mark writes in the comment, he says, get a Dell 38-inch wide monitor. Mark, currently I'm using 3 27-inch monitors, so I'd actually probably need more than one 38.
Yeah.
I've really got this thing maxed out. But if anybody knows in the chat room, I will be forever grateful, because that is just one of those simple, annoying things that honestly Windows 10 should be able to probably do. It's 2017. Memorize.
It should be any properties for the app. Like you should be able to, because this you can go in there and say, run this thing full screen all the time or whatever, or I guess maximize. But yeah, you should be able to position it exactly and size it exactly. That should be in Windows 10. I agree.
So, anybody has a clue, please let me know.
Someone will.
Next little bit of news here, Paul. This comes from KGI, which is an analyst firm, I believe, out of Asia. They've got a pretty good track record, mostly because they play in the supply chain industry. That's like kind of what they do, and so they tend to make predictions about where different products are going. And so they're typically pretty good about what Apple is doing. And they believe that for 2018, Apple is going to abandon Touch ID on all of their products based on supply chain movements.
Yeah. The way Apple works is they usually do that pretty slowly, right? They do something like introduce the Lightning port, right? And how many years is it before they're not selling anything based off the old connector? Or they introduce the style of Touch ID where it's kind of a robotic button and not a real mechanical button. And how long does it take for that to finally go away?
Yeah.
So yeah, 2018 is a little aggressive on the mainstream iPhones, but there's no doubt they're going to do that over time. That the iPhone 10 features will kind of go down market. So, actually for Apple, that would be pretty fast.
I got to tell you, if they truly do get rid of the Touch ID, I might become one of those bastion people that hides in the weeds and just uses their iPhone 7 for the rest of their life. Or more than likely, that could honestly be the thing that gets me to jump to Android, of all stupid things.
I know. Well, we're all waiting for this 10 thing to come out so we can see how bad the facial recognition is. But yeah, I think we all, one of the things I really like about the iPad right now is that you can put a headphone into it. Like you don't need a stupid connector. It's actually kind of nice.
Yeah, I caught myself, and I know I'm going to end up doing this. I think I even told you, it's like I kind of want to buy AirPods now, and I already hate myself for saying that. And here I am, mostly because I'm sitting in the airport, and it's like, well, I want to charge my phone, and I want to listen to music. And so like the dongle things are like $30 to be able to do both. And then it's like one other dongle that I got to frickin' take with me. And I'm going to go into tech. Like, you know what, Paul, there might actually be a market for this. Maybe we can offer this as a new Thurrott Premium feature. Mm-hmm. It's called Tech Therapy, where you just come in, you sit on the couch, and we talk you
just
through
let
your
people
grievances.
vent.
Yeah.
It's really just about a primal scream kind of thing.
Yeah.
We feel your pain.
Yeah, maybe
I like it.
Maybe we can get a Groupon for Groove Music or something for people to, get them in the door and get that.
Yeah, you're right. Sometimes people just need you to agree that what they're complaining about is a valid complaint. It's like, yeah, that really does sound terrible. I'm really sorry that you bought content from Microsoft's movie store. That was dumb, but no, it's okay. You're still a good person.
And one last comment, which I didn't really understand the gravity of the situation. I think you were describing yesterday, and I nodded off. But the Disney Movie Anywhere stuff is actually really. I'm actually somewhat excited about this because this might get me out of the Apple TV world potentially.
Look, you probably do the same thing. I try not to bother my wife with tech things because I know she does not care, right? And that she literally starts nodding off as I talk, right? So I try not to do this. But because we've been struggling with the Apple TV and the terrible remote, I said to her, I might have a partial out for this because this service just came, and I explained what it was. And I said, here's the deal. I can open the Amazon Video app or the Google Play Movie and TV, whatever they call their thing. And not all of, but most of the movies that we bought from Apple show up in there now. And that's actually really amazing. That means we could potentially access most of that content from some other device, which was never possible before. It was just Disney movies before. And maybe more studios will sign on. I mean, this is actually kind of incredible. By the way, a little tip on the flip side, if you do buy most of your content from Apple, if you bought something from another service, it shows up in iTunes too, right? Or on the Apple TV, whatever. And actually, that's kind of cool too, because you get bonus like the iTunes extras features. Those actually show up. So, in other words, I bought like a movie on Google for whatever reason, and when I look at it on the Apple TV now or on my iPad, I actually have access to the iTunes extras. Like you get that on the flip side as well. So, anywho, I'm thinking exactly the same thing. So, when I get home, I might start playing around with the Roku again because I'd kind of decided the Roku was the one dispensable part of the equation, and actually, maybe I'll use a device with a real remote. That'll be nice.
Yeah, this all seems too nice. There's got to be, we're going to get down the road somewhere, then they're going to start charging like $5 a year. $5 a year wouldn't be bad. But
I'm actually surprised so many companies sign up. Like, why would Apple sign up for this? Like, this literally gives you an exit plan. It's astonishing. Like, it doesn't seem like the type of thing they would ever agree to.
So maybe here's the flip side of that. Actually, I wonder if this is it too. By doing this, the movie studios are more in control of their content. When it's inside of Apple's world, right? Apple's like, haha, we own the movie studio because they have to be on our device. I wonder if on the back end, the movie studios are thinking, all right, we can let them watch it anywhere now. It's not so much dependent on Apple. They lose a little bit of control in that No,
but why would Apple have agreed to this, right? In other words, they must have gone to Apple and said, look, we're going to do to you what you did to the ebook market, which is we're going to work together. We're going to take our content out of your store, and or you can sign on. Who knows? I mean, maybe there were threats, but I look at this.
I think why.
I don't. What's that?
I think I know why. And then Apple turned around and said, "Hey, we're going to give 4K free upgrades to everybody who's an iPhone right now."
That's awesome.
That honestly might be what they did.
It's this nuclear war. I just looked at the Google store to see if they had flipped the switch on that, and they still charge more for at least for the content I saw for 4K, which is shouldn't be happening. But so whatever. I mean, look, it does feel like something that can be taken away at any time. But I've been looking at this on devices. I looked at it on the TV, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me! Like this is legitimately good. Like when it was just Disney, it was like, okay, cool. My Star Wars movies are everywhere. Like the couple of Pixar movies we own are everywhere. Neat, that's good. But Disney's only one of the top, 7 movie studios, whatever. Now 5 of them are there, and it's like, oh, actually, this is really interesting. And I don't know this for a fact, but I'm sorry. I was going to say, I assume if you bought an HD movie, say actually, I do know it for a fact. The same movie that had the iTunes extras was an HD movie I bought from Google. No, actually, that was a 4K movie. But I assume if you buy an HD movie from someone else,
Hmm.
HD is 4K now on Apple. I assume you get the 4K version on Apple now. I think.
Yeah, maybe.
I think so.
The thing
It's
that's
worth
running
looking
through my
at.
head, I'm trying to think of all the places I've bought movies, and it includes my Apple TV and my
Yeah.
Xbox, which isn't supported.
Oh, well, right,
Yep.
and probably will never be. But I've bought a few movies from everywhere because I always test things. So I've got some movies in Amazon. I've got some movies in Google. I have some movies in Microsoft, and I have a bunch, and most of them are in Apple. But as of today, most of them, 2/3 ish of them, are kind of pretty much everywhere. So that gives it's a lot of portability, right? We never thought we'd have this form of portability like we do in the music space, where you can buy music from anywhere if you want to buy music for some reason and it works everywhere, or you could use your music service pretty much everywhere, depending on the service.
Yeah. So interesting. I'm going to be curious to see how this materializes and moves forward. I hope that all the studios jump in, and then maybe one day all the network stations will actually bundle together and do the same thing, but for network TV, because that would be amazing. But I'm not going to hold my breath there. It is Friday, folks, and on Friday we do Follow-Up Friday, which is where we go back and look at some of the content created by you, and we read it here on the show, because there's a lot of good content. Actually, we're looking to do more of this because it's proving to be very successful, and you guys have some great insight. And so Wonderbar writes on the post that Google is bringing video calling to Android with Duo. He said, see, the integrated video calling features require the user to use Duo. So while this is definitely bringing video calling to Android, it's much more, we really want people to use our standalone random video calling app.
That's not technically true. The point of this is to get the video calling into the places where people want to use it, right? So worrying about where the capability comes from is kind of a mistake. Like it being, it integrating into phone and messages and wherever else is the important thing. The fact that it kind of like today requires Duo is like whatever, but in the future, when I looked at this, I thought, well, Android P, right, the next version of Android, Duo may just go away because now this capability will just be everywhere. Or maybe Duo remains as a shell if you want to just run the app. But to me, it's like Skype. You can come in, you have a text chat, you can turn it into an audio call, you can turn that into a video call, you can turn that into a group video call. Like you should be able to promote or demote this conversation to whatever form it is you want to take, and putting those things into the places where people are actually already using is the thing that makes sense. Like driving like usage of an app called Duo is not really the point. It's more like we want Android users to video call on our thing. We don't want them using another app. It's almost like the opposite. It's like, let's prevent anyone, well, not prevent, but let's incent people not to use other apps, right? Because the Duo app itself is probably not super popular.
Yep, they're trying to head off. I would have to think that, I think we all believe at some point FaceTime and iMessage will eventually come to Android. It's been rumored for years. And so if Google doesn't have a great solution in place, then people are obviously just going to pick that up. And the longer Apple waits, the harder they're going to have. Google will become entrenched. But Google has about 17 different messaging apps right now, and they got to figure out their own strategy first, which it feels like they might be starting to do maybe with this. Maybe this is the first step.
That's how I took it. Like, this is what makes way more sense than what they did. Actually, it was like a year and a half ago when they announced Allo and Duo. I was like, seriously, what is the point of this? Integrating that stuff into the apps that everybody already uses is what makes sense, and they can do that. And that's smart.
Yeah. So the next comment comes from a Whispers Echo, and it's Paul, actually, on one of your premium posts where you analyze Microsoft's mobile strategy moving past the smartphone. And he is referring to Satya Nadella's comments. He says, this guy's actions have guaranteed that Windows will be irrelevant in 5 years. You can talk about the enterprise all you want, but they will move away as well, even if only 20 to 30% make the move. Combine that with consumers being non-existent, and in 5 years you have a company struggling to survive in the cloud with a few services hanging on for dear life. Windows and the ecosystem is dead or will be. Xbox will be sold. PC sales will drop by another 50%, and enterprise will embrace other options. That's like a
post-apocalyptic bit of fiction there. Okay, look, we all have opinions about what might happen in the future. Um, I, there's a couple of things here I'm not entirely sure of, like this notion that we're not going to have our own mobile platform, thus Microsoft, Windows is dead, and whatever. I wouldn't commingle those two things. I think it's fair to say that Windows faces some interesting issues in the enterprise as well as with consumers, and you kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, like with Google and Chrome going into the enterprise. I mean, that's going to be a big challenge. Windows has met these kind of challenges before, though. Linux was going to take it over. Mac's got this giant halo effect from the iPhone. Surely that's going to happen, and you see Macs out in the world for sure. But Windows is still 80-something%, whatever. The issue isn't Windows versus Chrome or not having mobile, whatever. It's just mobile is a thing, and unfortunately, that is kind of the way the world's going. So I don't see it happening very quick, but I think the most important thing that I guess I disagree with is that strategy that Nadella has outlined is the reason that this thing declines super fast all of a sudden. Like, that's not it. Like, you're faced with, you being Microsoft, are faced with this situation that is the way the world is going. And so what can you do? I mean, it's managing decline is kind of a terrible way to put it, but in a way that is what you're doing. Like the forces that are occurring here are kind of inevitable. And so what you want to do is do what Microsoft is doing to Windows, which is promote those things that are unique to a PC form factor, that where you can take full power of the processor and the RAM and the storage and everything, and have a full-featured operating system that can serve what Microsoft now calls creators, right? Which are basically what we used to call like knowledge workers, or people who produce content or create content, whatever. So the PC has that particular strength. I think that continues. It's just a question of how big the size of that market is compared to the rest of the personal computing market, and unfortunately it is a small percentage. It's the way the world is. But I don't actually look at what he's doing or what Microsoft is doing and come away with a huge negative reaction to it. Like, I sort of think they understand what the future is, where the volume's going to be, both revenues and users. And it's not necessarily on this one device type. It's cloud, it's AI, it's quantum computing, it's this, machine learning. So I mean, I think we're really personalizing the decisions that Microsoft makes, whether it's something big like Windows Phone, which is a big deal, or Groove, which to me is a very small deal, but yet super personal reactions to that.
Sure.
People feeling like personally betrayed by Microsoft. And I've pointed out in that case, this is a platform that kept going for 11 years, guys. Like, are you serious? Like, only 7 people were using it, right? I mean, it's kind of amazing it lasted that long. And they didn't just kill it. They gave you like a way to get out, and I don't know. I don't really see what else they could do.
You're not personally offended that they're leaving mobile?
No, I feel bad about it. I mean, we all have our sort of rationale for why what happened, and we wish they did this one thing at this one time that would have saved the company or whatever it is. But, history has spoken. I mean, it's just the consumers are buying what they buy. Sorry, guys, it's just the way it is. And Microsoft is approaching that. The one thing I think I wrote this in my article, the same way they've always approached things, which is pragmatically, here's the situation, let's deal with it.
Yep. I don't really disagree. The thing that stood out in that comment is this is going to have zero impact on Azure, because that's an entirely different customer base. Not to mention you can run anything on Azure. It's not tied to Windows, and that's very done specifically in case there is a future with no Windows. You don't need whatever. That's just the Azure platform.
I actually think it's just quickly. I was just going to say, as far as all this stuff goes, it is kind of interesting. You look at Microsoft even 10 years ago. What's the center of Microsoft? And I think everyone would have said Windows. 15 years, of course, 20 years, of course. The way that this company has evolved is kind of impressive, and I don't think they get enough credit for that. A lot of companies are good at doing one thing, and they milk it for a really long time, and they miss the next wave. They miss the next wave, and they disappear. Microsoft has absolutely missed some computing waves, but I don't think anyone thinks they're going anywhere. I mean, this is a humongous company that makes a ton of cash, and they've set themselves up for this future where it's enterprise, cloud, AI. I mean, we may not like it as enthusiasts, like we want to be using our Zunes and, what using our portable media centers or whatever other baloney we're all talking. But it's the world went a different way, and look, they're still here. They're not like Polaroid, they're not like Kodak. I don't know why those are two camera examples or whatever, but a lot of companies just disappear because they can't do the next thing. And Microsoft is looking great. They're bigger than they've ever been. It's not a company in decline.
Right.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's just you have to not ignore that.
Yep. What else you got going on this weekend, Paul?
Well, I'm back. I'm back home. I guess I'm back in my previous home visiting friends. So we're having a get together tomorrow night. So just that. Spend 6 more hours in the car on Sunday. Looking forward to that. It'll be good.
You gonna eat any clams while you're
there? No, I don't think I am. I'm gonna have some sushi today, though.
Is that
not a lot of good sushi? Yeah, there's not a lot of good sushi in the Lehigh Valley, from what I can tell. I don't know what it is. The Amish just aren't into it or whatever. But I'll get my fix while I'm here.
Yeah. Enjoy the mercury.
you really. I love it. You always bring up mercury. Like this is the reason why I don't eat sushi is mercury. It's like I'm sure it's because it looks like creatures, but that's okay.
That's That it is. I don't know what. I should ask my wife what we're doing. I think we're going to a pumpkin farm this weekend, provided the weather is not atrocious. But
of course you are.
Why wouldn't we, Paul? Because that's what we do. We do family things, and we smile when our kid is picking out 10 different pumpkins and can't decide on which one, while it smells like horse poop.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I look forward to seeing those photos of your daughter crying because the pumpkin she wanted is gone, and she changed her mind. She came back, and someone else took it.
It happens. Those are true words of somebody who's been to a pumpkin farm, a pumpkin patch, I should say. My spine is already looking forward to that hayride. So.
Nice.
All right, everybody. Today's show is brought to you by Smart Deploy, IT tools to manage Windows computer made easier. That's smartdeploy.com/Thurrott. And as a reminder, we do this show every day, Monday through Friday. And we'll catch you right back here next week and have yourselves a wonderful weekend.